Hi, this is Christy Marks, the writer of Gem and the Holograms and Beast Wars, and you're listening to Geekcast Radio Network.
Hey, this is Tom Thaler, creator of Long Distance, and you are listening to The Pull Bag.
You've just jumped inside The Pull Bag. Join TFG1 Mike and the rest of the comic crew here at the GCRN as they make their great escape into comics. From DC, Marvel, and Image to IDW, Boom Studios, and Zenescope, we have everything right here. We cover things like Transformers, He-Man, superheroes, TMNT, and Radiant Black. Yeah, we have all that and so much more. It's all inside the Pull Bag here on the Geekcast Radio Network. So, without further ado, it's time to talk about the comics we're reading right now, here inside the Pull Bag.
Hello and welcome to The Pull Bag, only on the Geekcast Radio Network. This is episode 458. I am, of course, TFG1 Mike. Joining me this time around is the duo that runs Alt Pop Repeat. It is Chrissy and Marie. Hello, ladies.
Hi. Hey. Hi.
Yes. Hello. All right. Before we get into the comics questions, everyone listening knows the comic book origins here on the Pull Bag. We've been doing this for 8 years now. We have 25 questions asking our guests about how they got into or out of comic books. But since, honestly, this is the first time I've talked to you guys, and I've only listened to the Kevin Eastman episode.
Right.
Which it's funny, you guys go into the, what do you call it, the sink after that. Yeah. And talk about the history of comic books, because for our 400th episode, we actually did a discussion on the comic book history of comics, which is a collected edition thing that IDW did. Fred Van Lent, and I forget who but it's basically this comic book history of basically American comic books. It didn't go into all the European details and other things that you guys did in your episode, but basically, from Simon & Schuster to Bob Kane to all that other stuff. So Alt Pop Repeat. First of all, when did each of you want to get into podcasting? Chrissy, you can go first.
Yeah, gosh. About a couple years ago, we started this. We're going to our third season starting in January. So roughly about 2 years ago, 2.5. A podcast is, I've been always wanting to do one. So it was trickling in my mind for not even like, Marie and I started the podcast about 2 years ago, but it's been trickling in my mind for probably about 3 or 4 years before that. So I knew that I just wanted to get into the medium and I loved it. And I just didn't have a partner in crime for it. And I always wanted a partner in crime for it. And then Marie and I hooked up and we were friends before, but we became better friends and we started a podcast. So that's really, but I just love the medium. Just love it a lot.
Yes, and audio is far superior to video, folks.
Yeah, honestly, it is in so many ways. It's so intimate. That's why I love it. You can make it whatever you want, but audio just has this intimacy that you just can't get away from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where if I need to do the dishes or the laundry or whatever, I could have the Coolio episode playing in my pocket, on my phone, and I could be listening to it as, So, I mean, what about you, Marie? What made you want to get into this? Was it just Chrissy dragging you along, kicking and screaming?
Oh, my gosh. No, I have always worked in media one way or the other. So when I was little, I was always acting and I was doing commercials and then I was modeling and then I was doing pageants. And then I had a live streaming talk show called Nat and Marie, which was at the time was the first type of that particular type of live stream program. Everybody was doing talking heads, but what we did on our show is we had built our own studio with about 8 different cameras. We had a director. We were switching between them. We had segments. We had guests. Had people could call in and Skype. So we really innovated in that space. And the only other people that had a live stream talk show at that time that was similar to us is the incomparable Tom Green, who was doing it in Los Angeles. And at one point we were trying to get equipment from him to help grow our show because he had all the top of the line stuff and was trying to get rid of it. And we're like, please give it to us. So that was really fun, but that only worked we did that until 2010 till 2012 respectively, but it was still really ahead of its time and nobody was live streaming in that way. And they didn't really understand, like audiences didn't understand timed viewing. So appointment viewing, because we had gone from having that growing up like 80s and 90s. now that we were reintroducing it, saying it's timed viewing every Wednesday at 9, you can tune in and watch the show. You also have access to all of our guests, including, like, we had on the show the GM of Reddit. We had Flula Borg, who actually was in the most recent Suicide Squad. So he was one of the characters on that. And he was on the show, great guy. And we said, look, if you call in, you tune in while we're going live, you can have access to everybody on our show. You can join in and be a part of it. But it just wasn't enough. So unfortunately, we put it to rest. I went back to just writing and doing digital marketing because that's my other gig in the daytime. And I kind of walked away from it feeling a little disillusioned. And then Chrissy and I reconnected after a few years because Chrissy was helping us with Nat and Marie. She was doing PR with us, doing consulting, and did a fantastic job. And we reconnected, and Chrissy was like, hey, look, I have this idea for a podcast I've wanted to do for a little while. What do you think? And then from then, we just kind of went full steam ahead. And, you know, the sistership has basically turned into everything from we call ourselves travel wives because we love to travel together. We're
facts
co-hosts, and then just like sisters from different misters. And that's it.
Wow. That is wow. Yeah, for me, everyone, well, besides you guys, everyone listening knows how I got into it. I had been listening to podcasts in 2006 or so, and throughout 2007, and by December of 2008, I'm like, I could do this.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, crap. I want to sound like the non-Adrian Cronauer guy in Vietnam, the one in the beginning that he actually replaces. You know, like, this is the news on the top of the... Oh, God, those early podcasts of mine. Don't listen to those, folks.
Everybody has an origin story, so yours is no less important, right?
And everybody gets better. People always ask me, they're like, which one should I listen to? And I'm like, God, don't listen to the first one. I'm like, unless you really want to hear like us just, you know, not struggling, but just like it's a different vibe. Like it just becomes its own beast and it evolves. So, you know, I love that we've been able to like evolve this over 2 years and you get better at your craft. So that's the best part about podcasting. The more you work on it, the better you get.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So where did the title of the show come from?
Oh, it's eponymous. You can relate to it, Chrissy.
Yeah, we were playing like really like it was just playing with words. Like I said to Marie one night, I just was writing stuff down on a list. Like I'd had this Google sheet that I had Excel spreadsheet that I was like writing names, and alt pop was something that I was just playing with because it's alternative, it's pop culture, and then repeats. So in my mind, it was like that whole cycle, you know, counterculture, alternative culture becomes pop culture. And then you get that cycle that repeats itself again. Something becomes alternative. And then so just playing with words, and it just kind of created on its own. So and it's something that I find that's catchy, and a lot of people are like, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. So it's different, and it's fun. So it was just playing with words over a course of time. But we also had like tons of different things. We had like sub pop, and then we're like, that's too close to like Subway kind of stuff. It sounds like a submarine shop with pop. Like we went through like so many different
sub pop the records, right? Like you can't. So it was, we still have it. Like I saved the document and all of that fun stuff. And I remember we had so many discussions about how we were going to get down to the actual final name. And I always like have a very like minimalistic, bizarre, like retro kind of aesthetic. So I wanted it, like for me, the name of the show really had to be evocative of both the work that we're doing as well as have a sense of like kind of like I wanted that 90s kind of like cool grunge kind of feel, but not sub pop, because clearly that would have been a copyright notice away from us having to change our names.
Well, it's not like you could call it TLR or TRL or anything.
And Carson Daly would have rolled over in his grave. So
wait, he's not dead.
Well, maybe a little bit.
That show is dead.
The show's dead. Yeah.
I'm sure there's somebody that worked on the show that's dead, but
well, heaven forbid. But yes. Oh, that's crazy. All right, getting into the 25 questions.
Cool.
Did you grow up reading comics, and at what age do you first remember reading or noticing comics?
I was saying this in our interview with Kevin Eastman, and we go into the sink. For myself, I wasn't like a massive comic book person. I was a comic strip person. So it was Garfield. Every time my parents would open up the paper, then I would read the comic section. That was something that I'd love to do. So that's where it started for me. And I used to draw too. Like I paint and I used to draw comics when I was a kid. So I was obsessed with like drawing Disney and all of that stuff. So I'd created my own little comics, but it was mainly like sketching from actual like looking at comic strips. So that's where it kind of came in for me. But I'm not so much into like the insane comic book world as everybody else is. I love them. Like, don't get me wrong. I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, love Kevin Eastman and their story and their origin story. But for me, it started in comic strips. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, how far back do you want to go? Like, my mother is British and my dad is Arab. So when I was growing up, in order to have a connection to my British roots, my grandparents would send over British comics for us to read. And the one that I read voraciously as a child was like these old like newsprint paper comic books, and it was The Magic Roundabout. And they were just children's cartoons. That was it. But in those pages, there would always be ads for kind of the older comics. It would be Spider-Man or Wonder Woman. And then when I was about 9 years old, I was going through my sister's thing. I have sisters that are older than I am, and they had their stuff from university all boxed up. And I was like rifling through it, and I found all of these comics. Like I found all of these Spider-Man comics. Like my sister Nana was really into Spider-Man. And then I found a Batman Year One Frank Miller comic, and I destroyed it. Like absolutely destroyed it. Had it in my backpack. I was carrying it with me everywhere. I was painting the back of my backpack. I had sketched out and painted like all sorts of different cartoon characters. I was really fascinated with Felix the Cat. I got into vintage cartoons. So I think the one thing about Frank Miller and the Batman comic that I found when I was 9 was in particular how political it was. And it blew my mind. And also, if I remember correctly, Selena Kyle was a prostitute. And I also my mind was blown because the only other representation of Batman that I had growing up was on a show called, I was on Saturday morning, Switchback. And they would play like clips from, like that old Batman series from the 60s.
Yeah, the Adam West series.
Yes. And so in that, everybody is very much above board. It's like Comic Code Authority approved comic depictions. So to find this one comic book where it's just gritty and dark and completely unlike anything else I had ever seen really introduced me to a world that comic books are graphic novels. And they really deserve to be treated as such. But it was to go like from, and literally a span of maybe 5 or 6 years to go from The Magic Roundabout to Year One, kind of was like my innocence lost. But yet, pleasure gained.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to say it was Year One because I do not remember. But I remember as a kid, and I've told this story over the last 8 years, but I remember my mom finding this big, literally, graphic novel, trade paperback, whatever you want to call it. It was a full volume of Batman, and it was not Adam West Batman. It was dark and gritty Batman, and I don't think it was Frank Miller, but I can't rule that out. And I'm just like, whoa. And it was like right before the, hit of the decade was coming out in 1989. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this is getting me prepared as a 9-year-old. All right, so Marie just gave us her story of how her grandparents kind of sent stuff over. But Chrissy, as a kid, was there a parent, a friend, someone who just said, here, kid, read this comic, go away, you bother me?
No, I didn't have any of that. If anything, my dad read the funnies too. So we would read them together. So yeah, no one ever it wasn't, I just kind of pulled it, and maybe I was just kind of following suit with him. That could be totally possible as well. But yeah, we just, and as I got older, I still love comics. Like I still love comic strips and stuff like that. So like Cyanide and Happiness is like, I love them to death. Although when I did meet them at a fan expo, I think it was Comic-Con or Fan Expo, I was so disappointed because I was across the way, and I turn the corner and I see their massive booth, and to a friend, and I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, Chrissy, I'm like, it's Cyanide and Happiness. And I'm like, run, like booked it to the booth. And I'm like, hi. And I'm like so excited because I'm like, I would watch their stuff before I would go to bed. I would just follow everything they were doing along with animation. And so I was like buying everything. I bought a plush stuffy. They made me like a little picture. But then anyway, so when they were great, but when I went to go meet them and I said hi, and I was like, I love your work. Like I was so excited. They were not enthralled at all. And like, this is something about animators as friends that are animators. They're not always the best with people at times. And that doesn't mean everybody, but you can tell sometimes they're just like, leave me alone. And they could tell that they were like, we just don't give a crap. And after, I remember I bought everything, but I walked away and I was just like a little sad inside. And to be honest, I haven't watched or read much of Cyanide and Happiness since that moment too. It kind of took it down a notch. I know.
I don't like when stuff like that happens because, you know, you were so pumped about it. And then you had such,
but it took it down a notch for me. And I was like wanting to like talk to them and, you know, and it was like, hey, let's be friends, you know, but I get it. Like you got like tons of thousands of people coming through Comic-Con or Fan Expo like every day. And you're like drawing, you know, pictures for them. So what they did was made me like pick out a name or something. And I think it was like a scene, a name, and they would put me in it and they drew it. And I still have it. And it's great. It was like a cocktail party, but with like a whole bunch of different types of characters. And it was fun. But when I walked away, and I did frame and I put it in my house and whatnot, but when I walked away, I was just like, you know, I wish they were a little bit more connected, but hey, can't win them all, but I still love it. So
yeah, the thing about convention appearances and people being at them and people that you want to see, it depends on what kind of person the person is, but you know, you're there to see them and not, I don't want to sit here and say they need to realize that without you, they wouldn't have a job kind of thing. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is everyone needs to be respectful of everyone else. We understand everyone has bad days, but when these people are your heroes or are, you know, like you look at any of the voice actors, any of them, doesn't matter, Frank Welker, doesn't matter who it is, Tara Strong, you know, those people have to go in there with a modicum of they want to be there to see the people that enjoy what they enjoy doing. You know what I mean? Somebody told me something about, this is years ago. This is before he passed, but apparently Leonard Nimoy went to lunch in the middle of a convention with a long-ass line waiting for people to see it. It was like, okay. Alrighty then. Spock isn't so logical now, is he?
And you have to show that you care a little bit, like just a little bit. Yeah. And even my friend beside me try to make a joke and was like, she goes to bed with you every night. Cause I do. And they just laughed. They didn't even flinch. Like it was just, and I'm like, she even made it funny. Like, come on guys, like give us something. I still walked away and bought like half the crap, but you know, I wanted to support. But hey, you know, it is what it is. But maybe they had a bad day. You can't judge everybody, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is caustic humor. So I mean, really, like when you think about the type of comedy that they do in the Cyanide and Happiness, you kind of understand why it's a little, as I said, caustic at times. Yeah. You're like, okay, well, maybe you have that vibe in you, but you know, you have to respect the fans. The fans are the ones that are spending their hard-earned dollars to buy all that fun stuff, which you did after you saw them. You know, you got to respect that role.
And for every one person that either in general has a bad attitude about fans, there are thousands of others that, you know, will spend 3 hours with you or whatever kind of thing. Like I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I have spent countless hours with various voice actors and writers and creators just on an audio call, just like what we're doing now, you know, where I always say when I go to advertise for an interview or for whatever, for people to come on shows for Geekcast Radio Network, is that we generally have shows that range from 30 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. However, we can cater to the person's time. So someone like when we interview Maurice LaMarche or Tara Strong, and I'm not just saying those names just to throw them out there. We have done that in the past. I'm saying we can cater to whatever I can cater to whatever time you need. Whatever, if you say, oh, we can't have this go over an hour and a half, sure, great, let's keep going. When you were a kid, which characters were your favorites?
Ooh, I am a fan of Batman. So Marie and I have actually talked about this because so now I know it's one of her favorites too. Is Catwoman for sure is I would say one of my favorites in any of that world. But Batman is for always just a great superhero in many ways. That's what I would say on my end.
Yeah, I mean, really. What Catwoman has given to me, like my mild to extreme obsession with that character from age. Okay, so I loved year one, but my weird Catwoman phase probably started in junior high, like age 12, and probably went until I was like 14. Like obsessive. I was obsessed with her. I was like, I'm going to be Catwoman. I'm going to learn how to use a bullwhip. I was next level weirdo insane. Like my locker was just pictures of Catwoman. But what I loved about her is that she's to me was a classic anti-hero. She wasn't like Batman was kind of like living in the shadow of what he needed to accomplish in order to avenge the death of his parents, like over and over and over. Like he was stuck in this hell loop his entire life. And Catwoman was just like, this is who I am. I'm neither good nor bad. I'm just living my life, doing whatever it is that I want to do. And you know what? The reason I became Catwoman was because I wanted to conquer over my past. Whether it was like she was running away from, oppressive male figures, or whether in some versions, like, again, she was stepping away from her dominatrix, prostituted past, whatever it was, she had this moment where she was able to take ownership of herself and her identity and just reinvent herself in the way as a strong female character. Plus, I love cats. So it kind of is like the perfect marriage of everything. And also, like, who wouldn't, like, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, like, if we want to skip over to a movie, was banging. And that costume, I'm sorry. Like, I still spend every single day, I'm going, I think about her claws. I'm like, what were those? I'm like, what sort of strange sewing accessory had allowed her to have retractable claws? That is like the one mystery that has haunted me my entire life. But otherwise, I'm like, yeah, Catwoman could get it any day.
I hope you don't have a transforming "Hello there, hell here" neon sign in your house.
Dude. I had the poster of her standing in front of hell here. And I like loved how smoothly, like when she walked into the apartment and her arm just like switches. She doesn't even blink. She's like looking straight ahead and she like walks in. I can't remember. She was holding a bag or something. And with her other hand, without missing a beat, she just swipes up, hits the O, and then she just hits the two letters without even blinking and continues on. I was like, why is she so cool? Like, she doesn't have to look at stuff. She just is awesome.
I am Catwoman. Hear me roar. The thought of busting Batman makes me feel all dirty. Gotta go. Girl talk.
Selena.
That's my name, Maximilians. Don't wear it out or I'll make you buy me a new one. You poor guys. Always confusing your pistols with your privates. Oh, please. I wouldn't touch you to scratch you. Honey, I'm home. Oh, I forgot I'm not married. Who's the man behind the bed? Maybe you can help me find the woman behind the cat.
The age-old question: DC or Marvel?
Dude. Chrissy, you go first.
Chrissy. I'm going to say DC because I don't follow the I know I would like Marvel, but I haven't followed the amount of interconnected stories that I have with DC. I know you're going to say the opposite than Marie, but I'm going to say DC for that case, just because I don't follow. And Marvel has done an amazing job in recent years with their films and everything else, and have showed like the interconnectedness. But I haven't gone down that train. And one day I will do it. But that is a lot of TV watching, and it's a lot of reading. So one day I will go into that universe. But outside of that, I would say that I'm probably, even outside of DC and Marvel, I would say I'm a Star Wars chick. Just saying. So, but if I have to choose between the two, I'm going to say DC.
Marie?
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously there's merits to both. So, I mean, I do recognize there's distinct differences, but I just think that today, so when I was a kid, for sure, I was DC. I loved Wonder Woman. I loved Batman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I have to say today, where I'm standing, if I would choose Marvel, and mostly it's based upon the cinematic universe, because I think that they've handled it so fantastically. And right now I decided that I was going to undertake the entire project of watching the entire MCU, including television.
Started?
I started it in August, but I'm doing television shows and movies in chronological order. So right now I'm at, I just finished The Inhumans, which was not my favorite. I just think that was like, they could have done better on that entire series. I was really disappointed with it. Yeah. But what I really enjoyed is that what Marvel is doing with their cinematic universe is that they're truthfully exploring everybody that's in it. The fact that they have, you start off with obviously Captain America, but then following that Agent Carter, and you're just looking at Peggy Carter starting up S.H.I.E.L.D. And I thought that was a really interesting exploration. And then I also love on the Disney Channel right now, they have the What If series. So let's explore the alternative timeline. So I know this isn't talking about like comic books per se.
Right. No, it's yeah.
But like the MCU is just so much fun, and watching it in chronological order and including the television shows. Like I would say, when I first talked about it on Twitter, I have lots of my friends who are very, very involved in geek culture were like, yeah, go for it. And I was surprised with how many other people were popping in, mostly dudes, that decided they were going to try and like mansplain. They're like, you don't need to watch the TV shows. You don't. And I was like, yeah, but I don't think you understand the exercise that I'm doing. Like, I don't care if you don't think I need to watch it. I'm going to watch all of it. And I'm going to have a holistic sense of how they set up all the characters and the dimensions of the universe, and really understand like the politics and the nuances of the society that they built. And I highly recommend it. Like, do not leave out the television shows. Some of them are a little hard to watch, aka The Inhumans. But ultimately, you walk away with a really, really rich sci-fi superhero world that is, I don't know how they're able to maintain such good continuity. I have no idea. Yeah.
It's probably because they stick to their continuity and they don't flip-flop their continuity every, 2011, 2014, 2024, 2044, however many times DC needs to reboot themselves or rebirth themselves. Anyway. Yeah, no, I agree with the Marvel Cinematic Universe thing. I have not figured out. I know what the chronological order is of the films, and I sort of know the TV shows, but not all of them yet. But
I can give you here. The list is, I cheated. I did not figure this out for myself, obviously. But there is on PocketLint.com. Mm-hmm. They put together a definitive list of a chronological listing of just the films, as well as the films and the television shows. Mm-hmm. So it's super easy. You just work your way through.
Yeah.
I'm at Thor Ragnarok right now, which I've already watched before. So I have to re-watch it, because that's a part of the exercise is I have to watch the whole thing. Like, I don't skip anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I still do not see, other than the very, very last end scene, I do not consider Incredible Hulk in it, though, because it's so vastly different, and by far it's the most evil of all the movies, because they killed Stan Lee by having him drink a tainted soda. How dare they?
Oh, wait, you're talking the one with Ed Norton?
Yes.
They filmed that in Toronto. It's very exciting because I was working at University of Toronto at that time, and they were filming the major battle. Come the end of it was in front of the University College, which was the building I was working in, and I had friends that were in the movie as well. So from that perspective, it's nostalgic and exciting. But I agree with you; it's just not. It like just doesn't really fit.
Yeah,
but
no.
Disney doesn't really. They don't have the rights to Hulk. Did you know this? Is this something that everybody knows? They
have the rights to some Hulk, not all Hulk.
Yeah,
I think. I don't know. It's an all rights issues and all that stuff. It's all whatever. As far as DC or Marvel, the way I see it is, and I say this in every single one of these episodes, I don't follow the companies. I follow the characters. Fair. So like DC, Batman, Nightwing, Batgirl, Tim Drake, Robin, that kind of thing. Marvel, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Captain America, whatever. When it comes to the comics anyway, I follow the characters more than I follow the actual, other than the fact of whatever's hitting, like I said earlier, whatever is hitting the news, like, oh my God, they're destroying the universe again, and we're gonna have to start all over and tell the same stories, but in a different way. Wow. What other publishers do you enjoy reading?
Good question. I'd have to say, like, as far as like independent, I can think of particular like comic books, but maybe not necessarily like publishers per se. But oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to like look it up. I'm like remembering things from my childhood, which are again relatively obscure. So
I never thought what other publishers do you read question would be the hardest question on here, and it's only the 5th question.
No, come on, lay it on us. We're not backing down. Just give us some time to get our druthers around it. I mean, I would say like in terms of like other graphic novels, again, this is just by actual like publisher, but it was Persepolis is a graphic novel that was an autobiographical series that was based on the Ayatollah taking over Iran in 1979, and it's a story of a woman who's like working, like getting through it. And I was obsessed with it. Like, I think is one of the most beautiful, is a beautiful story. And I think it is one of those like huge testaments to the power of illustration and word coming together to really tell stories that are like next level. And then beyond that, it's like manga, like anything, any Japanese comic books. I do love. I had an obsession with Sailor Moon again when I was younger. And now I'm just like branching out to try and kind of, because I grew up not in Toronto, so didn't have access to a lot of stuff that most people did. Mm-hmm. So now it's kind of like, now that anime is just becoming very like fashionable, it's really exciting for me because I have access to all the things that I ever dreamed of having access to as a kid are now available at my fingertips. And I can't wait until we're back out of COVID and all these lockdowns and the comic book stores can finally open again.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say, like, for mine, I'm still gonna stick into like the Bill Watterson area when it comes into Calvin and Hobbes. Like that was mine again. Comic strips, not as much comic books, comic strips. So that would be. I'm more of a fan of that. I have like a mix T-shirt that someone did like a mock-up of Calvin and Hobbes, but they do a Star Wars riff of it, and then and Calvin, they're walking across a log, and Calvin, one's a Jedi, and then Calvin is Yoda. So I like that. I'll stick into the comic strip world. That's still I'm a fan in that place.
All right. I always preface this question now because the way I've written it, it always sounds really weird when I say it. Print or digital? Which one? Both? Either or? And why?
Print or I'm gonna say print. But in digital, like, do you just mean in TV show wise, or do you mean
no? The comic books, reading comics, print or digital?
I'm gonna say print. That's for sure. Yeah. It's always. I don't know. I'm going to say print. I'm going to go classic because it's nice opening up something, especially if you buy a collection. I think that's also the other thing too. It's nice. I'm like a paper person too. Like when I buy a book, I like to have a hardback book. I don't like a Kindle. I like to hold it in my hand, and I also like to keep it because if I ever want to look at it again or reference it, I have it on hand. I'm just not big in the digital, even though I love digital things and all different types of digital stuff. But I'm going to say when it comes to anything writing, anything comic book, anything comics related, print wise.
I like the access of digital, but I love the visceral experience of opening up a book and the smell and the experience of just not being connected to anything and not having to look at it on a device. There's something about that that's really comforting and kind of like magical. Whereas, I mean, digital, as I said, I think one of the greatest things that comes with it is the fact that it provides access to comics much more readily, especially in communities that might not have access. Like they might not have a local comic book store, or maybe they have to order things in wait and they don't have the opportunity to thumb or whatever. There could be 1,000,001 reasons why, but digital, I think, provides access to more people to have access to comic books as opposed to print, where print you kind of have to be able to either buy it or be in the location of where they're available or have them handed down to you or whatever. But if you could go print, go print. But if you can't, go digital and don't lose out on the experience just because you can't have a print.
Yeah, I agree with, the print thing of having it in your hands. But for me, print is nothing but art books now. Because the way my vision has always been my entire life, it's really bad. So when I found, and sadly I'll get into this in a second, but when I found Comixology's guided view a number of years ago, where you can go panel by panel and it zooms in and it zooms out and it draws your eye where it's supposed to go, I can't read it unless it's on Comixology on my computer, not on a phone, not on a tablet, just on my giant monitor. Sadly, now that Amazon has bought them and is basically folding them into Kindle, it's a whole mess. But I love the collectability of print, but I love actually reading, and there was nothing ever more to the point of being so shocked as doing Comixology guided view, and you have this. Like you're on the end of one page, the next page is this beautiful splash in your face, even though it's on a screen, but it's zoomed in, your eye is drawn to whatever it was, and it was so cool.
Totally.
Who are some of your favorite comics writers and why?
Well, 100% we're going to say Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. That's
of course.
Yeah. Like the reason why I love them so much is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are amazing and they're iconic, but what they've done in their lifespan, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, is unbelievable, and how they've taken this comic that they just did for fun and they're best friends. Like that story on its own is unbelievable, and how they became best friends. And you can tell that there is like this true friendship through and through, and love for each other and love for the craft of creating comics. And so when they created this and they hooked up with their manager, and their manager is like, I think he was like selling vacuums or knives. Like he was like no way even connected to the comic book industry. I love that. And then he came in and he had all these big grandiose ideas about, what these turtles are going to do and where they're going to go, and like making movies and merchandise. And they hooked up together, and it just sounds, every time I hear that story, I'm like, no way that worked. You're like, no way. And you shake your head and you're like, how did that even work? Like, how did these guys do this? It's actually the impossible what they did, I think. And a lot of people can't accomplish what and they want to. And then the story of how they, Kevin Eastman became a little bit of a playboy, and like started gallivanting and doing his own thing. And then Peter Laird was just like one, and Kevin was selling off his assets, and Peter was like holding on to all of them and like collecting everything, and had like that major room still full of all of like the original Ninja Turtle action figures and everything he did. And he was just like Peter was just like grasping onto the memory of them, and you can tell in their friendship. And then Kevin was like, screw you, I'm gonna go do my own thing and be like some Hollywood star. And then later on they came back together, and Peter had more, I think, of the assets of the Ninja Turtles, and then Kevin's come back, and now they've created this new the new version of the Ninja Turtles that's come out, and
The Last Ronin. Yeah,
exactly. And like, it's just that whole story of them being friends, along with creating something that's like so fantastical and so great, and having this manager that like didn't even know them, that came in and put them to this other level, I think is just really beautiful. And it's my favorite best friend story. So I will always say, like, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird for sure are hands down my favorite.
This is okay. So this is going to go out to another direction. Obviously, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because that was like a childhood obsession. I had a slightly unholy crush on Michelangelo. That's a story for another time. But maybe Mike Mignola from like Hellboy. Just because I like weird characters that are kind of underlings, and I loved how the writing in Hellboy is just kind of mysterious and it's interesting, and I didn't find it pretentious. It's not difficult to follow, and I love that there's a romantic element to it. There's still a little bit of everything, and even though he is ultimately like, what is it, the son of a witch and a demon, like I like him as a character. I just think he's boorish and funny and interesting and persevering and all those wonderful things. So I found it like, it's so probably that's what I'd say.
Very cool, very cool. What defines a good story to you?
A really strong narrative and a really strong connection to characters, and like a really great backstory. When we look at Batman, like that whole Joker, of like the Joker story that's always evolved from television and film, like how it all started. I really like that. And I like the fact that people can actually create some backstories too, within the film and TV world with it. But I think, a really strong narrative, strong character connection, but like even a strong backstory that's gonna propel that. I think that's what is really great storytelling.
Obviously plot, but I think a really good nemesis. I think there always needs to be a really, really strong antagonist for the main character to really push them along the way, because this is what Kevin said in our show as well, is you can't have a hero without having a villain. And your hero is only ever going to be as strong as your villain. I mean, you have to have those two that kind of play off of each other. So you can have these beautiful worlds that you create and these wonderful imaginative plots and storylines, and have consistency all the way through it. But unless, of course, you have that raison d'etre that's going to like drive people through, I think you're kind of missing out on a major part of what makes a comic, just a plot, great.
Yeah. What does a story so this is different. What does a story have to draw you in? So you go into the comic shop, you pick up a new number one of whatever. Let's say it's some new Batman book or whatever. What does that one comic have to have for you to go back and get the second issue?
I'm going to say comedy. I do like something that makes me laugh. That's probably why I like comic strips so much. Personally, that's probably what that is. Some form of comedy, or just, I'm going to say that. Just some good humor.
I'd say diversity right now. I think it's like one of the freshest things that are coming into the entire industry, is that the introduction of dimension that never really existed before for whatever reason. Maybe it was because of the Comic Code Authority, who knows? But now you have characters that are queer, and you have characters that are female, and you have characters that are non-binary, and different ethnicities and races, and I think that's really exciting, because now it's exciting to me because one, I think it's interesting because I like to read different stories about new people and learning how they kind of reimagine or push the envelopes with different characters and different storylines. And I also think it's interesting to get in the world of other people and other communities that I'm not necessarily a part of, and to be able to do that through comic books, I think is one of the true powers of the whole medium. So I'm pumped, right? Because it's Ms. Marvel. She was casted for the movie. She was from Brampton, which is, we joke, call it Bangladesh, but it's mostly a South Asian community. So I kind of love this idea that there's this, one of the newer characters that's being introduced in the Marvel universe is an Indian superhero. I think it's wonderful.
Some of us old people will be like, Ms. Marvel, you mean Rogue?
Kamala Khan, that's her name.
Yes, Kamala Khan. I know a lot of people didn't like it, and I'm not as much as a gamer as I used to be, but I watch video game playthroughs all the time, and her being the star of the Marvel Avengers game at the time, I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was awesome, getting the Marvel Cinematic Universe in video game form from a mystery, like she has to solve the mystery of the stuff. I thought that was awesome.
Oh, for sure. And for sure, the old guard is going to be feeling uncomfortable with it because there's a formula that they grew to love. I'm saying like the royal they. Yeah. They grew to love. There's a certain reliability. It's a comfort. Whenever you're reading comic books, there's a comfort that's associated with it. And when that formula is switched up, you're just like, oh my God, is this going to get changed forever? And I'm going to lose the things that made the comic books great. And then for me, it always comes down to what is it that makes it absolutely wonderful. And for me, it was just reimagining and imagining new worlds that I don't have access to in such a wonderful way.
Yeah. And I think the thing of it is, though, all those old guard people, because I didn't really, my whole life was all about cartoons. Comics were there, kind of, but it was movies and cartoons and video games. I didn't go full tilt into comics until Snyder's Death of the Family, Batman issue number 13. Mm-hmm. And then this podcast started, and 9 years later, here we are right now recording this new episode. But it's one of those things where just because things change doesn't mean they don't stay the same as well. Because take Batman, for example. Mm-hmm. You have 80 years or more of Bruce Wayne stories. At the tail end, right before New 52, you had Dick Grayson as Batman. It was different, but it was cool. It was awesome. So just because you now have Dick Grayson as Batman for a few stories doesn't mean it erases the thousands of issues over the past X number. Anytime any new cartoon or any new whatever comes out from a existing franchise that, for example, because we're all about Transformers here at the Geekcast Radio Network, anytime a new Transformers cartoon comes out, my old Transformers like Beast Wars or Beast Machines or the Generation 1 cartoon, just because there's something new doesn't mean it erases what came almost 40 years ago now. That show is still there. That show I can still go back and watch and enjoy it for what it was. So this whole thing of insert character name here, oh my God, is so different compared to the last 40. It depends on who the character is. It depends on who the superhero, like Iron Man or War Machine or even Spider-Man. Spider-Man's Spider-Man's probably the best example. You got Ben Reilly. You got other people. You got hell, for half a while there, for 30-something issues, you had Dan Slott writing Otto Octavius as Spider-Man, as Superior Spider-Man, which is one of the things that this podcast cut its teeth on. I absolutely loved Superior Spider-Man because it was different. It wasn't I'm Peter Parker. I'm a high school kid who gets bullied, and then I'm going to go out and save people and, whatever at night. And because new things come along doesn't erase what has already happened. That's why we have history.
Totally. I mean, like, my favorite reboots right now are on Netflix. I loved the She-Ra reboot that they did. I loved it. And I was animated by the same people that did Steven Universe. And I think they just made it really great. He-Man Revelations, still have to watch part 2, but so into that. Are you kidding me? The cast in it is phenomenal. The story is fantastic. Yeah, it's not the same as it was when it came out in the 80s. But, I mean, arguably, when it came out in the 80s, they weren't allowed to have violence. I mean, He-Man wasn't allowed to use a sword. You know, there was things that they just weren't allowed to do that they can do now. So they can finally, sometimes, what we fell in love with was one version. Like you said, the reboots or the refresh of the storylines and the characters, sometimes it's an opportunity for the original creators to realize a vision that they weren't able to realize. And that was the one thing, like, I mean, the show that we did with Kevin Eastman, whenever Chrissy and I were going through the syncs, and we're talking about how the morality of things were impacting, morality was really impacting the way that comic books were being created, and how it really created this thriving underground comic book scene. It really bring to light that when it came to mainstream comics, there was so many it was so prohibitive that they just weren't able to dance in that space as strongly as they ought to have been able to. And now we're just in a completely different time where we kind of recognize the art form for what it is. People grew up loving it, and now they can finally reinvigorate all of those old titles and bring in just new juice. Let's juice it up. Like, and I'll never forget the time when it came out that Green Lantern was gay, and like everybody was like, what? Like, no, how can that be? And I was like, dude, like, there's always been subversively gay characters all the way through comic books. Like, I refuse to believe that Poison Ivy was straight. Like, I refuse. There's just like some, I'm just like, no. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it's a constantly evolving thing. And the one, I guess, and I'm not even really a part of the old guard. I'm 40 something years old at this point, but I don't consider because again, comics weren't ingrained into me as a kid. They were there. Yes, I remember running to Walden Books to search out the latest because the sad thing is, folks, back in the 90s in Walden Books, you were not going to get a bagged and boarded copy of Spider-Man. You were going to get something that people have rifled through and maybe the front page is ripped or whatever. So for me, it's like they're always changing. They're always evolving. The characters are always, whatever. There's never going to be like we have multiple origins for multiple characters. Like, between DC and Marvel specifically, they both have a like Batman from Earth 2 is not the same as Batman from Earth 1, and Batman from Earth 9 is not the same as Batman from Earth 38 or whatever. And that's the greatest thing, because what that does is it allows writers and artists a chance to have their say on what story they want to tell with said character. Speaking of art, who are some of your favorite comics artists?
Ooh. I have a funny answer to this one.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to say Cameron Stewart, because he's a Toronto-based artist. Mm-hmm. He did Batgirl. He also worked with I have to look it up. Fight Club. Who wrote Fight Club? Chuck Palahniuk. Mm-hmm. He also illustrated the Fight Club comics. Also, I just think it's fun because I can say that I went on a date with him. And that was it.
I didn't know that. You did?
Yeah.
Okay, you tell that story, because I think that's probably going to be the most interesting story all night.
Oh, stop. Don't behave. We've had lots of interesting stories today. Come on. Wonderful guy. We met online. We chatted back and forth. We met up for drinks, and I thought it went really well, but I didn't get the call back for the second date. But he was we had met up for drinks, just a wonderful guy. And I just wanted to grill him, like ask him questions about comics. Like, how did you get into it? What was it like? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges? Who are some of the people that you've worked with? What's Chuck like? Like, I wanted to go through it, but at the same time, I can imagine that he gets asked those questions like 1,000 times over. And so I tried to reserve it for when he came back, because he was going to England for a comic book festival at that point, and he had to take, there was like something happened. He had to take all of his merch and all of the stuff that he had to sell with him. So he was like off the grid. We had some texts back and forth, but also I'm a lot just as a person. I just say funny, like I think I'm hilarious, but sometimes I'll just like go off in my own little universe, and without realizing it, I will derail a conversation, not intentionally, but I'll just like write something. So he was in, I think this might have been why he didn't call me back, was because he was in England. And I wrote to him, I was like, pip, pip, cheerio, apples and pears on the tillywog. And
you mocked him.
Like, I mocked him. I'm British. I can mock him. But he's also British. Anyway, so he just like wrote back and was just like, ha ha. And then I never heard from him again. But it wasn't like that. I'm just like paraphrasing, but it was very similar to that, where it was like, how are you apples and pears? So it didn't, I think that's kind of how I tanked having a actual comic book character illustrated in my likeness. Yeah. So, and then for the longest time, I kept looking at his Instagram profile. I was like, okay, this girl kind of looks like me. It was, but it wasn't. None of them looked like me, but that was it. But it's okay. I have my own illustration of me as Catwoman on the wall that a friend drew.
There you go. Mine's Jason Scott Campbell. I'm like J. Scott Campbell. He's I did a cosplay once of his Mary Jane Watson, where she's holding a teacup, like a coffee cup, wearing like jeans and a shirt that has Spider-Man on it with a heart. So I did a cosplay of that. And so he's probably my favorite, but he's amazing. A lot of people love him. Like, he's just a talented artist.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I actually interviewed a cosplayer years ago now. I wish she was, I'm sure she's still around somewhere. I don't know. I'm not saying she's dead or anything. I'm just saying I haven't seen her online lately at all.
Who's that?
Mad Mel Madigan.
I don't know her.
Yeah, she did one of the best Black Cat cosplays, and Mary Jane. She did Mary Jane from all of the stuff she did in Spidey was from J. Scott Campbell's stuff. It was awesome.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I love cosplay. It's like one of my, for sure. I've done a couple of them, but that was my first one I ever did, because I'm like, I love the image. But I'm like, also, this is like a good start. And my hair was the same color of Mary Jane Watson at that time. So I was like, this is perfect. So I didn't have to put on a wig. And it did well. But then I printed out like the Daily Bugle as well, and had some props and played with it. But it's a lot of fun. And I've met him before too at Fan Expo too. He's a lovely man.
Very cool, very cool. I was going to say, they don't know it yet, but next up on All Pop Repeat, we have Cameron Stewart as the next guest.
Could you imagine? If anybody knows who he is and they send a message to him, he's not really active on social because he found it very toxic, and I don't disagree with him. If anybody reaches out, they're like, yeah, there was a girl that ran out. He was like, oh, damn it. That's why I don't go on social media. But he's a lovely guy, an incredible talent, and you know what? I still haven't given up hope that somewhere along the way I'm going to stumble across a feed, and then there's going to be a character that he's drawn, and she's just as exquisite, but not as exquisite as I am in real life. But, you know, I'll take it. I'm like weirdly obsessed. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to be like drawn in a comic book. And I have a friend of mine. She was, I can't remember at the top, but she's a model, and she was a model for a whole series of comic book characters, like legit. And I was so jealous. And every time she got a new one, she would like send the picture over, and she's like, how do you think about this? Marie was like, oh my God, Lori, this is amazing, but I'm also so incredibly jealous of you right now. I'm trying to remember what they were called, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
Do you have a favorite non-superhero title?
Non-superhero title? Do you mean by just like a title of a person?
No, like comic title, like something that isn't Marvel, something that isn't Iron Man, Spider. Like, for example, somebody's favorite might be Sex Criminals or something. So Turtles technically doesn't count since they're superheroes.
Scott Pilgrim? Does that count? Scott Pilgrim. He wasn't really a superhero. I mean, he did have to battle Fiona's ex-boyfriends, but... And also, he was written in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So, like, a little hometown love for Canada. Woot woot.
There you go.
I don't know. I'm going to have to pass. I'm not sure. So that's like a non-comic book?
You afterwards, I swear.
It will. I'm like, I don't know. What's yours, Mike?
Non-superhero. Ugh.
Like anybody could be a non-superhero.
Yeah, I am a non-superhero. So are you?
I'm going to say my dad. I'm like, that there's so many, I would say.
For me,
Donnie Darko. One day would be a superhero.
Strange Planet.
There you go.
There you go. I got one. The Dave series and Dave 2 and Daveocracy from Ryan Ferrier. It's about this robot named Dave, D4VE, and it's a series of robots in the future and things like that. So,
okay, I'm going to change mine and I'm going to say Wally then. Yeah. Or Johnny 5.
Yeah, Johnny 5 is Wally's dad.
Exactly. I have this little made out of all different parts that's like a handmade little Wally, and he sits just below my TV, and I'm trying to get him a Johnny 5 that's a little bit taller so I can have the pair.
That's awesome.
My heart. I got him in Venice Beach.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he's so cool. And I would say also, like, I mentioned this also in the show, the comic book show as well, is 8 Ball. Daniel Close. It was like an underground comic, came out between 1989 and 2004. But I came acquainted with it whenever they did a brand associated deal with Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola put out a series of cans for cola called OK Cola. And Daniel Close had used his 8 Ball characters and illustrated, I think, was like eight different tins. And they were so atypical that I like loved it. So, but weird, and there's so much stuff happening with independent artists. It's like, my God, so good.
Absolutely. What is your favorite run of a series? So basically, like I've said before in this episode and other episodes, Batman's been around for 80 years, but your favorite run is Batman 456 to 577 or something.
Dude, I'm not going to be able to answer that question.
I know. Like Superman? Like
Superman? You can just make something up, Chris. You just go for it. And then if people are...
Superman. I do. I actually just love Superman in general. I have a friend of mine that looks like Clint Clark, and I am in real life, and I'm like, you're secretly Batman, aren't you? Sorry, Batman. Wow, I'm tired today. I'm like, Superman, aren't you? So I'm gonna say, yeah. I also just love the films too. There's some of my favorite film work when it comes into superheroes. Again, love superhero context, but I'm a big fan of like the older craft work. It's probably because I like the nostalgia of it, and I just think it's better. It's like Batman with Tim Burton and the older Supermans. Just gonna say that. Everybody just hissed at me and we're like, I do love
okay. You're like,
personal preference.
That's
Superman
okay.
3 taught us a lot of stuff,
Yes.
There's I had to look it up because I don't know what the run numbers were, but obviously year one, I read all of those. It was 404 to 407. So clearly was the most formative of my comic book, forays into comic books. And then there's like this really cute, like anime, like manga series that was based on a cute little cat that looked like my cat, which is why I bought it. But I mean, really there was like, I only have like 1, 2, and 3, but there's tons more. But you're one.
Very cool, very cool. What is one comic you can read over and over again, single issue or trade?
Well, I destroyed year one. The end. And it was like it was a properly bound version. It wasn't just like, it was beautiful. Yeah, I destroyed it. My sister, I think that's part of the reason why my sister and I have a very strained relationship. Oops. Sorry.
It's okay.
I think there's credit card companies want their money. Not today, guys. Bye.
Can't get money out of a stone.
Exactly. I don't even exist. I'm here talking about comics. Yeah, I don't even remember what was happening. Chrissy?
I'm going to go back to comic strips. I'm going to say The Far Side. One of my favorites as well. So I could read those. I could read comic strips all day, every day, along with like Family Circus. Those were like some of my favorites. So I can always go back to that. There's something about like opening up a comic strip book that I think that there's just, if you want to have a good laugh. And to me, that's why I love Side 9 Happiness so much.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, we don't like being negative on the show, but we do have a couple of negative questions because they offer discussion. Are there comics you avoid altogether? So like you go into your local comic book shop and you're perusing and you see you see a Larfleeze comic in between Swamp Thing and Batman or something. Like basically you're in your comic shop and you're looking around and there's just, that whatever comic that is, you just have zero interest in it.
Yeah. For me, it's like anything where, and I know this is like a loaded gun considering I said Catwoman is one of my obsessions, but anything where on the cover of the comic book, the woman is like overly sexualized. And I also did not connect with Harley Quinn because I, for all intents and purposes, have also emerged from an abusive relationship. So I found that her characterization and her origin story and how she came to be, I personally didn't like it. I found it triggering. So sometimes I'm just like, either they just are over sexualizing women's figures and then immediately that's like a no-go. And it could really be anything. And there was one particular Catwoman, comic I remember because when I was little and my parents were just like, okay, go and get yourself a comic book because you destroyed your sisters. You should get your own instead of ruining all of their belongings. And I went to the store and there was a new design for Catwoman and I just was like, what is going on? Like she was just all tits. And I was like, okay, this is clearly, in that moment, I felt like this was not made for me, that this comic book was not made to be inclusive of me as a reader, and that it was created for a very specific audience of which I was not necessarily a member of. And that's the part where I'll kind of like, people can make choices however they want. I mean, that's the great democracy of capitalism, I guess, whenever it's running correctly, as you can spend your money on whatever products you want and endorse those products as being the, worthy of your dollars, your hard-earned cash. So, I mean, whenever I'm choosing, I typically will try and choose things that will enrich me, teach me something new. I get to maybe support a new artist. But if it comes down to it where it's like, I just feel that it's like women, like there's so many women illustrators and authors right now in the space that there is absolutely no reason for a comic to be released that isn't in consultation, at least with a female artist or writer, and get some of these right, because it's toxic. Like in my mind, I'm like, erroneous depictions and over-sexualized depictions of men and women in comic books is harmful, right? You're just like, girls growing up thinking that they have tiny waists and, Brazilian butt lifts and whatever, and guys thinking that, have the ideal body as they need to have a certain like six pack and all the rest of it. And that's just not the case. So
yeah, we're not going to look at anything. I agree. I echo Marie on that. We're not going to read anything as a female that has like a character that is portrayed as dumb. So I'm not up for that. If anything, I'd rather be a stronger narrative female, so I would stay away from that as well. But I'm also a fan of like going down like Artist Alley and like finding new stuff, because there are tons of artists that are coming out, and there's tons of different comic books that people are creating that are independent that are really, really great. So I don't know, I'm a fan of that. I think I had a friend of mine that did it was like Toilet Monsters. And she had like a whole release of it, and she was the lead in the comic book. And then she created with a comic book team that like animators that made it. And I think they've done like 2 books. So she's actually done a pretty good run of it. So like stuff like that, I think is a little more fun and different. It's not always just staying in the same vein as mainstream. It's going a little bit off kilter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, lovely ladies, a bonus question. Does it matter to you if it is a male or female writer writing a male or female character? So I have all 6 volumes, but I've always wanted to go back and look at the New 52 Supergirl run. Mm-hmm. Mike Johnson is the writer on that, and I read like 3 panels, and I'm like, this just doesn't read right to me. Mm-hmm. Like, do you feel like, not saying necessarily that only female writers should write female, you know what I mean? Like, male writers should never write female characters. I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to ask, do you feel like sometimes there's a disconnect when either gender is writing either gender of the character kind of thing?
For sure. I'm going to say it depends on the person who's writing it. Mm-hmm. That's it. Their outlook of life, how they think about women, how they perceive women, or how they perceive men. If it's a woman writing a man, how they perceive it. If there's more stereotypes, if they're open-minded. So I'm going to say it's totally based on the individual. But I'm not opposed to a man writing a woman and a woman writing a man. There's different perspectives. Also, it could be a totally different character too, right? But I think it just depends on who the person is that's writing it and what their intentions are when they're writing it. I think that probably makes more sense, because who says that a man can't write a really wonderful, full, dynamic female character that might be based off somebody, right?
Yeah.
Right. But you could have you could be basing a character off his wife, and he spends so much time with her and he loves her dearly, or he has like his daughter. I think that it just depends, and he probably knows her so well, and he spent his whole life with her. Why wouldn't that just be close to who that person is? So I don't know. I think it just depends on what the intention is.
I mean, I would sit and say, like, try and avoid it if possible, and write for what you know, because there's certain things about, like, as a female, obviously there's tons of things about the male experience that I couldn't even understand, like how there are certain motivations in certain situations for me are going to go through a female lens, and it's not a good or bad. I mean, like, vive la différence, as the French say. But if you really want to have like truly in-depth and like fully formed and fully fledged characters, then you need to be able to get into that world. And if you yourself are not of that gender, or not of that ethnicity or race or experience or whatever, then it's really important to bring people into the fold that are like, you can have, I mean, it's not every comic book, it's not written by one person. Quite often you have 3 or 4 different writers contributing to a project. And I think that having a diverse writing team allows for the stories to be even better, because it's like, I mean, let's think about it. Historically and traditionally, most comic books that entire industry has been dominated by the male perspective. And while it has done so much for it, it really has, I mean, it's many of the characters that we know and love were created by men, but what would have been different in how the female characters would have been treated if they were, women? And there's like there's the test where it's the lamp test in comic books, where you can take a look at a storyline, and if the female character can be replaced with the lamp and it doesn't affect the storyline whatsoever, then she's just illustrated as a prop. When you can have, and I think we realize this now whenever we're looking at stories, and especially what's being shared on television, some of the most popular films and characters and series are female led. And I think it's just because it's as unfortunate as it sounds, they're fresh and new. Like Wonder Woman, it came out, great movie. They did a fantastic second one in 1984. But, even like Captain Marvel, like I loved it. And even going back to the show, Agent Carter, I loved. Like, you get to really connect with characters. But I think that it's important to have a female perspective if you're writing a female character, and I think it's important to have a queer perspective if you're writing in a gay character, for example. It's the same. It's not just like men and women. And so that's basically it.
All right. Because I don't know. I've always, and I would have asked my other male friends, but I'm not on a podcast right now with my other male friends, because ever since I tried reading that Supergirl New 52 run, it just didn't read right to me. And I don't know if it was because at the time I had been watching the show so much and whatever. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Are there any comics in the past or currently that you wish you had not read them? Like I wish I could get that 10 minutes of my life back.
No.
Yeah, I'm going to say no too. Like, it depends if it's like really that bad. Like if you've gone to something independent and it's just horrible, then yeah, maybe that would be the time too. But I'm all into supporting new creators, and so I'm not going to say, I'm not going to rag on anybody.
Oh no. This isn't like.
No, I'm not going to name Ray.
It's not. Yeah, it's the question isn't really about like. It's more about like whatever comic it was, like the story itself. Even though I'm not saying you're going to sit here and say negative things about a writer. I'm saying that the story itself just wasn't for you, and I kind of wish I had that time back. Like I could have like stopped and gone and did something that I would enjoy versus continuing this that I'm not really enjoying it. You know what I mean?
Well,
that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I would say in terms of comic books that I don't choose to purchase hentai. So, I mean, as much as I love porn, I guess I don't want to read manga porn. Like I don't. That's probably it. Like it's not a genre that I really connect with. I don't feel like I don't need that in my comic books, but I get like it's a whole other art form into itself. Like people love it, and I respect it for what it is. I'm not looking down on it. It's just not my thing. Like if I'm looking for the motivations of my main character, it's not about like, fucking the truth out of them or whatever the storyline is. Like it's porn.
Yeah. I think the closest we've come to porn on this podcast is sex criminals, folks.
My life story.
We've only done 3 of the 6 volumes or 5 volumes or however many there are of that series. How large or small is your physical comic book collection?
Oh gosh, mine would be smaller. Marie's more of a comic book fan than I am, so I would say mine's a lot smaller. But again, comic strips. I'm the comic strip girl. I have way more of those and books of those than I would say of any form of comics, like comic books.
Yeah, mine is mostly like vintage and like old comics. I still have the box, like because they have such a strong sentimental meaning for me, and those I have, which is it's a lot, like hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds. As far as newer comics, I had recently let go of a few like Batgirl comics, but I did keep an anthology of the Runaways. And that was basically it, like to try and minimize it. And I've given away a lot to like my nephews because, I want to foster their love for the art form as much as I possibly can. So, I think Willie Jonas, which is like my youngest nephew, is the only one that is kind of into comic books. So, but that's it. I mean, mostly it's just the really, really olds again, like the Enchanted Merry-Go-Round, the Magic Merry-Go-Round. That's it. And anything outside of that, I've got a couple Spider-Man. I can't remember which ones off the top of my head. They're all in storage right now. And then, as I said, the Runaways. That's it. So small.
Oh. Very cool, very cool. What is the one comic you could never live without ever? So basically, the house is on fire, every human, person, pet, whatever is safe, but you're going to run back in to save this one comic because you can't live without it.
Mine again, a comic strip will be Cyanide and Happiness. I will take all of my collection with my plushie, my T-shirts, the picture that they did for me, along with the comic books, and run out.
This is, again, going to come out of the blue, I'm sure, is like a Gem and the Holograms comic, because, again, it's like, it's very like childhood, warm and fuzzy. It's like, that would probably be it. And then also very obscurely, there was a issue of Archie that went out in like 1991, and it was Archie and the gang went to the Canada Games, and that year the Canada Games were on Prince Edward Island, and that's where I'm from. And they went across like all the different venues on the island to go. They did synchronized swimming in Summerside, and they went to Charlottetown. That one means so much to me. Like it doesn't have any cash value to it, but it means so much to me because it was a mainstream comic that somehow had bizarrely decided that they were going to do one specific about the Canada Games, which unto itself is like really niche. And in addition to that, it was even more niche because it was on PEI. So it's like Archie and his gang, like Veronica is in Summerside, and my mind was blown. So I probably would save that one because it's a little bit of nostalgia, and also it just means a lot to me because it's related to my home province and my hometown. Mm-hmm. I also was supposed to compete that year in synchronized swimming, and I couldn't because I hurt my knee, and I was very sad about that. So, it's like a little bit of everything. Makes me nostalgic.
That sucks.
Yeah.
What was the most money you spent on a comic or a comic item? This could be something from a convention or anything like that.
Ooh, I don't know how much I've actually spent. I've spent a lot, even just magnets and original art. Oh, I'm going to say at least like $70, $80 on a whole bunch of stuff. Like it just in one go. Mm-hmm. Just like if it's one artist, but yeah, that's what I would say if it's independent or if it's just actually from like Cyanide and Happiness. Always. So yeah, I would probably say that much between like 70 and 80.
I don't think I've spent very little. Like I don't really go out to like when I'm going to any of the Comic Cons. For me, I just want to see like the people. I want to see some memorabilia, and definitely I want an excuse to go and cosplay. And when it comes to like purchasing items in that space, it really needs to be something that brings it alive for me. The one thing I wanted that I never was able to get was there was a limited run makeup line that was all based on Sailor Moon, and it was I think it was a Japanese company. And what they had done is they had recreated each one of their transformation wands. Mm-hmm. And they were perfect. They were beautiful. They weren't chintzy recreations. But when you opened it, each one was a lipstick. And I lost my mind. I just loved it. I thought that was probably the most, for me, I was like, that was the greatest. I love makeup and I love Sailor Moon. So that was one thing I would have put money down. But it was, in order to get it, import it, they had already been on sale for quite a while. So I came into it late. So I would have been spending about $300 on it. But I want Sailor Mars specifically. All the other Sailor Scouts, Sailor Mars. She's my girl. I need some Rei Hino, but I couldn't find it. Sailor Mars transformation was gone. So I'm still on the hunt for it. So it's still an expense pending, but I'm sure I'll end up spending oodles on that just to have it. They did a great job on it, though. They're beautiful.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, usually when I ask that question is like, I bought this Green Lantern ring that this actor wore, or I bought a broken Batarang or something or other. Just those special, like the comic item thing is more of like, oh, this is really unique. This is really cool. Like those. Was it you, Chrissy, that mentioned Gem?
Yeah, that was Marie.
Yeah.
Oh, that was Marie. Okay. So, sorry. We're all having a rough day here, folks.
No, Gem is great. Gem is to be shared.
No. What I'm saying is me remembering things. We're all having a rough day around here, folks. No, like when they did the first 5 issues of the IDW series. Or the first I'm sorry, it was the first 2 issues. The first 2 issues of the IDW series, if you pre-ordered a special whatever it was, this foil box set or whatever it was, you basically got like 5 copies of number 1 in this foil box, but each of the copies of the number 1 had Jerrica, Kimber, Aja, Shayna. Oh God, who am I forgetting? Who am I forgetting?
There's Kimber.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, Jerrica, Kimber, Aja, Shayna.
And Rhea was
later. That's right.
Yeah, she was the replacement for Shayna she did it by coercion. Yeah. It was it was a spicy storyline. Yeah, yes. She was the best drummer. But I mean, the fact that I love that she was Hispanic. My mother bought it for her because she was like, "Oh, she's brown like you." So I'm like, "Hey, I have a."
Your mom actually say that to you?
Well, I mean, you grow up in a mixed household. There's like your parents want you to see yourself in your toys. And so I had a Gem doll for sure. Like, how could you not? And then the only other doll that she gave me out of the series was Rhea because she was like beige. And she's like, here you go. And you can play with her. But I loved because Rhea only became the drummer because she saw Jerrica transform into Gem. And they couldn't she couldn't be loose with the secret. But she was always also a really great drummer, so it was really unfortunate that she got the role by default. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. That comic series is severely underrated. The IDW Kelly Thompson series. Oh, severely underrated.
Severely. Also, Kelly Thompson making them to these punk goddess superstars. I loved. I mean, that is a cosplay I would love to do. For sure. For sure.
Absolutely. Was there ever a moment when you were done with comics? Like, I don't want to read anymore. I'm done.
Probably as I started getting older. It was started getting into other topics. I'm big into ufology, so I started getting into that. And just I think I just started kind of evolving away from it. And then you evolve back into things that you love to connect with, I think, as a child. So I think when I started going to Comic-Cons and fan expos and went into that world, then it brought me back into that. But that was in my later 20s and then 30s when I started going to do that. So I would say probably as a teenager and stuff, I started to migrate out of it and started migrating into more mainstream things. And not all mainstream like ufology now is, but it wasn't then. But I would say probably then. My teenage years getting into my early 20s.
Very cool.
I don't think I ever really stopped. But it's a good question. I just think my tastes and my exploration in space changed a lot. Especially moving to the city and having access to so much more than I ever had access before. And really seeing the possibilities in that. And that kind of makes it exciting. And that's really when I was able to really step in that space, because not only did I have access to it, I had permission to just do whatever it is that I wanted to. I could go to their reference library is close to where I live. Just go in and just sit down with a ton of comics and just read my way through it. So I don't really think there was a period where I kind of stopped. I mean, I guess more. Yeah, no, there isn't.
She's trying to talk herself into and out of the answer to the question all at the same time.
Yeah, I'm no, there isn't. Because every time I go through, I'm like, no. Because then you rediscovered She-Ra. Okay, no. And then you found some, no, okay. So, alas, no.
What are you reading right now, and what do you think our listeners should check out?
I'm not reading any right at this moment, I'm not reading any comic book right at the moment.
You need your own special comic strip origins episode, Chrissy, because you're like, comic books? Ew.
Not that I know. It's just comic books are great, but I think it's the humor that I love in comic strips. Don't get me wrong, comic books are fabulous, but it's just that I am a comic strip girl because it's the humor, it's the playfulness. I'm big into cartoons. I drew cartoons since I was like a little girl. So I was always drawing, and then I got into painting and doing oil painting. So like that world made sense to me. Comic strips made sense to me, and it doesn't mean that comic books don't have fabulous illustrations, because obviously they do. But I was more closer to the cartoon comic book world. So that's my So if anything, I'll pick that up occasionally and start reading it, but not anything like right now when it comes to a comic book.
Dude, I'm trying to make my way through the MCU, and that's really has been where all of my attention has been for the past few months. And I said that I would finish it come mid-November because my friend Steve Saylor was like, when you get to Endgame, I have to be there. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess mid-November. I'm really far from that goal at this point. So
you're on Ragnarok. You're close.
Dude, there's so many more TV shows. It's the TV shows that will bog you down, because at first you're like, I think 12 episodes is a great stretch for a series, but they're not. There's so many more. I'm like watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is like, what, 24, 25 episodes, 45-minute episodes. Like, it's so much to watch.
But I need to rediscover Agents as I lovingly referred to it over, like, because I'm one of those people, and I understand I do this to people too, where I will, my God, you need to read this. But if something is shoved into my face, I will avoid it at all costs. And for years and years and years, all the time that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was on television, I'm like, I am not watching Agents of shit. I am sorry. Coulson died. He died. He's dead. I don't want to watch his life model decoy. Anyway. And did you say Steve Saylor?
Sorry?
Say Steve Saylor.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah. My snowball, my BFF. Uh-huh. Yeah, Steve. Both Chrissy and I are both friends with him.
Yeah. Well, I interviewed him years ago for GCRN for This Week in Geek. Mike Dodd, Steve Saylor, all that stuff.
Get out! Stop.
Yeah,
no. I'm like, wait, did she just mention?
Yeah. So you know Mike Dodd's in that?
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen that boy in a long time.
Yeah, he's had some health issues recently, I believe. So, yeah, no, I know almost all that crew between Steve and Mike and Dave Dennis, and I didn't really get to know Pierce that well because I didn't get to record with him that much. But yeah, no, I've been wanting to get Steve on some shows lately for a while, but he never answers any of my messages. Anyway,
you better tell Steve.
Yeah, we'll tell him. He's
very busy.
He's very busy. His star is on the rise right now, and he's getting ready to go to the Game Awards.
Wow.
Yeah, so I can't remember if he's presenting or he's winning an award. It could be one or the other or both.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go shopping with him, and because he can't see, so he has put implicit trust in me to be able to pick out an outfit that's gonna look good. But he has these custom limited edition Xbox Nikes that were made. There was only like 5 of them made or something, and he has a pair of them. And he's like, I'm wearing these. I'm like, I can't imagine anywhere better for you to wear them. So anybody who's listening and this makes it in the show, Steve Saylor is otherwise known as the Blind Gamer.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and he's dope. He's great. Has a show, his channel on Twitch. He's great. He's doing a Twitch takeover mid-November as well.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
Yeah,
I haven't talked to Steve in years. I've had so many ideas to do shows with him over the years, and this Pullbag Origins actually has gotten wider into the Geekcast Radio Network, where we now have our cartoon podcast now has the basically same thing. Instead of 25 questions, it's 30 questions, but it's all about how you got into watching cartoons and that kind of thing. We have one all about podcasting. We have 30 questions we ask podcast producers and listeners and everything else. But yeah, no, Steve's awesome. All right. Last 5 questions here. Heroes, heroines, anti-heroes and heroines, or villains? What archetypes are your go-to reads?
Anti-hero. cut and dry. The end. Chrissy?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that too. I'll also say like a good villain. I agree. I think a good villain is always needed in many, many ways, like you said before, Marie.
So punish, pop, repeat, huh?
Yes, exactly.
You,
hey,
that's
title
funny.
of your. No, that's not the title of anything. I was gonna say title of your hente, but it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. Do you have a "my parents got rid of my comics" story?
No.
Just my sister taking back year one when I destroyed it.
Well, it was hers anyway, right?
It was, and she was
technically.
She was pissed. She was so upset. But I mean, like, come on. When you have younger siblings, you kind of expect that at some point they're going to fall in love with something that you own. I mean, if she didn't want me to have it, then she shouldn't have made it accessible.
Taken better care of it.
Yeah, she shouldn't have like put it in a box in her closet.
Oh, okay.
Like it was her stuff from university that she had packed up for her to grab whenever she came back home and she like moved into her new place. And I was like, ooh, what's in here? What will I find? And I literally was like, just like,
yoink.
Exactly. It was the visual of like the kid bent over head first in like a toy box and just like throwing stuff. Oh, nope. Ooh, what's this? This shall be mine. And then she took it. She's like, I really like this. And I'm like, yeah, but I liked it more. So anyway, so that's it. I lost that.
I can just imagine you and your sister now in a version of I liked it more. No, I liked it more. Mom, she's touching me. I'm not touching her. She's touching me.
I'm not touching you. He's touching me. He's touching. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
Their choice of activities? Dubious. Their choice of drinks? Obvious. Because Sunny D has a taste they crave and a full day's supply of vitamin C. Soda has no vitamins.
You're touching me.
Nothing can touch it. Sunny D, the good stuff kids go for.
So let's say you're looking for a podcast of your favorite 80s comic books, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Ninja Turtles, He-Man, etc. Where are you going to go to find us?
Welcome to Star Joe's Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan.
And I'm Chuck. That's right, everybody. We're the Star Joes. We host a podcast called Star Joe's Podcast, where we talk about your favorite comic books, your favorite toys of all the 80s properties.
Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Mask, Thundercats, Voltron, you name it, we cover it. If it's in the 80s, we'll cover it at some point.
Yes, so what you want to do to find us, you can go to iTunes, you can go to www.starjoes.com.
And remember, the Force will be with you.
Because knowing us is half the battle.
Touching me. She's touching me.
I'm not touching you.
You're touching me.
Not touching.
Touching me.
It's free air.
Would you cut it out? This is crazy. You guys are family. Oh, Hannah. Why are you fighting?
Because he ruins everything.
Not my fault.
Then whose fault is it? You're dead.
That is it. Go to your room and make up like loving friends.
You're gross.
Stupid.
Keep walking.
Oh, come back on your side. Go. Like,
Yeah,
do you even remember the names of any of the characters in it? No. Like, do you even know who Selena Kyle is? No, you don't. So just go. Otherwise, I'm telling Mom.
What is one comic item what is one item from a comic book you'd love to have in the real world? So any comic item that's in a comic. Again, I will reference like the Green Lantern ring or Batman's Batarang or whatever. Basically scaled up and functional for the real world.
I'm going to say Batman's vehicle because it's actually not like it's a full vehicle, but we don't have real ones in the real world. So I would drive around that. It's like a pimped up Murcielago, but even better.
Which version?
Ooh. I don't know.
There are only two correct answers. Actually, three, but two.
Can I take a movie version?
Well, yeah, that's the whole point.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if no.
I
was just saying. Okay, I'm like, I'll take. Then I'm going to take Tim Burton's version of it.
Yeah. The three correct versions are 89 animated series, and then once we get so far in the future that our children have to be around instead of us, Batman Beyond's Upside Down, because all is the Batman Beyond Batmobile is an upside down, souped up BTAS Batmobile. So anyway, what about you, Marie?
I would clearly steal Captain America's shield so that Chris Evans can come and reclaim it from me. That's my reasoning behind that.
You better be careful. You might get the old Steve.
No. I will make sure that I break into Chris Evans' house and I will take whatever, because I'm sure he's been gifted a prop for like as a souvenir of his time as Captain America. I will take that item. The power of it obviously is going to be in that it will bring Chris Evans to me. He will see me. He'll realize that he loves me. I will give him back of like, oh, haha, thought it was mine. Sorry, I saw it when I was walking down the street and I picked it up. I'm so happy I was able to save it for you. And then that's it. That's the history of it. The story of our love blossomed.
I feel like this is going to turn into a new Oxygen True Crime special at some point.
Like when Marie trying to get a date with Chris Evans. Otherwise, I would want, if I can't have Chris Evans, I mean his Captain belt, then I guess I would go for Iron Man's suit, because obviously, why wouldn't anybody want that? Or Gem's earrings, because that's cool. A hologram at all times, just in my ears. Like, that technology is great. Or again, Sailor Mars's transformation wand, and that would be it.
Yeah, I will suggest this to you now. I think the closest you're going to get to dating Chris Evans is watching the movie he directed, his directorial debut, Before We Go.
Wait, this sounds like a challenge.
Yes, it is. If you could create any comic storyline, what would you want to create, and what characters would you want to create it with? Basically, Marvel, DC, IDW, Image, Dynamite, Dark Horse, whomever gives you the keys to the kingdom. What would you do with it?
Oh, I know exactly what I would do with it.
You go, Marie. This is your go.
Okay, so I would create a classic comic storyline featuring Chrissy and I. Chrissy is the goddess who commands the stars, so she's a superhero, and she has the power to like fly and do all sorts of stuff in space. I am like the daughter of Earth, and I have the power to like control us things on land. Of course, I feel like it would be a Marvel thing, and we just like basically stir up shit. So like, one, we're not entirely superheroes. We're kind of just like people living our lives and going about and just trying to like do our podcast and like be happy and have a great time and not have to wait in a queue when we're trying to go to a club and trying to get Chris Evans to call us back. Like, we have very normal lives. But at the same time, we're mischievous and we just stir up shit. And then sometimes we go a little bit too far and then we have to fix it. That would be what I would do. I think it'd be hilarious. I would love it. It would be perfect.
That would be very, very interesting.
I mean, we're adorable.
Well, I think that I'm going to agree with you on all fronts for that. Every single front.
Right?
I don't think you could.
I'm going to put that we're able to fly, though, too.
Oh, for sure. We have to be able to fly. Oh, I get to
go by plane. We just fly.
Yeah, well, for sure you fly 100%. And you have the control over light, which I think is a really interesting thing because of starlight. So you can fly, you have control over light. I want to breathe underwater. And I can't fly, but like an airbender, I can manipulate air. So that would be cool.
And then we'll bring B with us, my dog, and he's the shapeshifter.
So
Cannabis is just a bitch.
Wait. You basically want to be the Wonder Twins with Gleek. Really?
Yeah. Let's do this.
Isn't this already happening, Marie? I thought we already hold on, what? Isn't this real life?
I mean, give me a second, and I can draft up a much better version of the story. But you're putting my imagination on the fly right now. I think we need B should be more like Orko from He-Man.
Masters, yep.
I like Orko. Orko was I'm glad the way they treated him in the new He-Man. I think he deserved a fair shake of it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
I really dig the what they did in the CGI. I like Revelation because we actually have a whole podcast that we've been doing over the last decade or so. This is a problem, folks. When you get to be a 12, 13-year veteran of podcasting, you have so much content that you can bring up almost anything. But I love what they did with him in the CGI version, the more kiddified version of it. I thought that making Robot Orko, I thought that was really cool. But what they did with him in Revelation was really good too. All right, last question. What is the one piece of advice you would give the comics reading fandom?
Watch our show.
Or listen to it.
Oh yeah, you can listen to our show. Sorry. So used to thinking. Yeah, I mean that's I don't know what else to say. There's no pearl of wisdom that I can give that's this beautiful just this beautiful end to the whole experience today, besides the fact that, if anyone out there is listening to the show and they want to check out Alt Pop Repeat, we would love to have them in our crew.
Yes. Go to altpoprepeat.com, and then we're on Instagram at altpoprepeat as well, and Twitter. Yeah.
Awesome. So they've jumped the gun on me, folks. This is the problem with not sharing the script with people, because I want the questions to be fresh and, off the top of your head answers. You have to scramble for them.
Who else was it that recommended that they should watch Alt Pop Repeat? Because we would like to meet them. Which he said a fresh take, and then I just assumed, okay, never mind.
So we are going to take a quick break. You're going to hear some other podcast ads and other things, and we'll come back to close the show after this.
Hey, it's Wes from Poppin' Off Toys. Wanted to let you know about poppinofftoys.com. We can be your number one source for Funko collectible figures to add to your ever-growing collection. If you're in Nashville, Tennessee, we actually have a retail store that you can come by, 5916 Charlotte Pike. And for the rest of us, poppinofftoys.com is always open, and you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And the name is just simply Poppin' Off Toys. Thank you so much, and always keep it poppin'.
It's Showtime Synergy. The latest review podcast from the Geekcast Radio Network is here. So join TFG1 Mike, Nicole Hailstorm, and myself, Lady Rec, as we will be reviewing all 65 episodes of Joe and the Holograms in a 25-episode-long podcast. You can find Showtime Synergy on iTunes and GeekCastRadio.com. We are the truly outrageous podcast that you want to be listening to.
What was that universal greeting again? Never mind, I remember. Ba weep grana, weep nitty bong.
Hey guys, it's Rodimus Primal, and be sure to check out my YouTube channel. Join me as I have Transformers discussions, retrospectives, toy reviews, and more. You can also follow me on Twitter at Rodimus Primal, as well as Facebook and Instagram at Rodimus Primal Show. Transform and roll out, and be sure to check out my content till all are one.
Last big party of the summer, folks. Let's go out with a bang.
Because the world needs another movie podcast.
The Geekcast Radio Network presents for your listening pleasure the Cinema Geek.
Hosted by Amanda, Kevin, Matt, and Dan.
Each week we dive headfirst in the landscape of movies as we discuss movie news, play movie games,
go in-depth on reviews,
and even have a top 10 countdown or two.
Also, don't miss our director retrospective series, where we review noted directors' movies film by film. Bottom line is, if you love movies and love podcasts, you need to experience the Cinema Geeks.
You can find us on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, or geekcastradio.com.
Discover a world of vintage and modern toys that's more than meets the eye with the Triple Takeover Toycast.
Hosted by toy writers and photographers Toybox Soapbox, 6O, and TF Square 1, this informal and chilled out series of discussions cover everything from vintage Transformers to Mask, Diaclone, Microman, and more, be it nostalgic or current.
Whether you're a seasoned collector or a casual robot enthusiast, all are welcome.
Triple Takeover Toycast.
All right, folks, we are back. Thank you for joining us here inside the Pull Bag. If you'd like to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show, there are several ways to do so. Visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can listen to and comment on all of our content. Send us email to feedback@geekcastradio.com. Here are all the ways you can listen to us nowadays: Apple and Google Podcasts. Leave us reviews, please. Spotify and any other podcatching client you choose to use. Follow us on Twitter @GeekCastRadio is for the network, @ThePullBag is for the show. I am at TFG1 Mike. What Twitters do you guys want to throw out there?
Well, they can follow us at AltPopRepeat, Mike and Twitter. They can go there. They can also follow myself. It's Chrissy at Miss Vocab. And then Marie, I'll let you plug yourself.
Yeah, I love to plug myself. So you can follow me, Karma Cake. That's my online name. That's like good karma and delicious cake, spelled KarmaCake. On Instagram, it's just @KarmaCake. And on Twitter, it's @KarmaCake.ca, because someone else took @KarmaCake and they will not relinquish it. And they passively aggressively, goad me in their bio, which I hate. They're like, I'm not Karma Cake the brand, whatever that is. I'm like, girl, you know who I am. Give this up. You just want to be me because you're using my name. So karmacake.ca, it's all spelt out on Twitter, and then just Karma Cake on Instagram. And of course, AltPopRepeat, AltPopRepeat.
Awesome. All right, folks, you can also find us on Facebook, Geekcast Radio Network, and the Pull Bag. Join us next time when we will be doing more So You Want to Be a Hawkeye, where I believe myself and Allison Richards are going to have a lovely deep dive into Kate Bishop Hawkeye with none other than Kelly Thompson. For now, I am TFG1 Mike with
Chrissy and Marie from All Pop Repeat.
Heyo!
As always, make your great escape into comics, and we will catch you next time.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pull Bag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback@geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter @thepullbag and @geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.